I will be calling this meeting to order at 5 p.m. Trustee Addison is currently absent. Public comment on closed session items. At this time, any person may address the board on any closed session item or any item not listed on the agenda pursuant to the Brown Act. The board cannot consider issues or take action on requests during the comment period. Time is limited to 3 minutes per person per item, 20 minutes per topic. I don't see any. Closed session items are public employee discipline, dismissal, and release, public employee performance evaluation, superintendent, conference with labor negotiators, employee organization, tax, CSEA, unrepresented management. With that, we will go into closed session at 5:01. We will reconvene to open session at 6:15 p.m. And I will have our student board representative, Hannah, lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. If we can please stand. I have a motion by Trustee Garrison.
I'll second.
Second by Trustee Candelaria Orr for the approval of the agenda order. I will read, the board reserves the right to change the order in which the agenda items are discussed and or acted upon at this meeting. Subject to further action by the board, the agenda for this meeting is to be approved as presented. Items may be added to this agenda for discussion or action only as permitted by the Brown Act. I have a motion by Trustee Garrison and a second by Trustee Candelaria Orr. Preferential?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And no one's absent. Public comment on consent and non-agenda items. The public may address the board on any consent or non-agenda item. Pursuant to the Brown Act, during this period, the board cannot consider issues or take action on any item not listed on the agenda. Time is limited to 3 minutes per person per item, 20 minutes per topic. If you have public comment, you may step up to the podium. I'm not seeing any. All right, closed session, reportable action taken. No reportable action was taken. Consent calendar. The Cloverdale Unified School District Board of Trustees utilizes a consent calendar for items that require the approval of the board but are of routine nature. They act upon these items in one vote. Any member may remove an item for additional questions. Board members receive their agendas and backup materials 7 days in advance of our meetings. They have the opportunity to ask questions and to do research prior to our meeting. It is their intent to handle the routine items expeditiously so that they have time to address issues that are more serious. With that, do we need to pull any consent items? All right. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve all items on the consent calendar.
I'll second.
So I have a motion by Trustee Lopez White and a second by Trustee Garrison for the consent calendar items I-1 through I-10. Okay. Preferential.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And no one is absent. Association reports. J1, California School Employees Association, Chapter 170.
Good evening. My name is Carlos Jimenez, and I'm the president for our CSEA Chapter 170. First of all, we would like to thank all outgoing board members. Thank you for your guys' time, dedication. And at the same time, we would like to welcome all of the new incoming board members. The only thing we have for our report is that we have started our negotiations with the district. We met last week. We felt it went pretty well, and we're looking forward to our next meeting on December 12th. And that's all I have. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you. J2, Teachers Association of Cloverdale. No. Nothing to report? All right, we have nothing to report. Thank you. K, school reports, Jefferson Elementary School.
So Michelle am I even on?
You're on.
Yeah.
Thank you. Michelle is currently at court, not because she has to be at court, but she's at court for something to do with the school, and so she's not here, so I will say that the as submitted. I want just to draw your attention to that each one of the board reports now from the schools are going to have the attendance written on there for each month too. So I just wanted to make sure you knew that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Washington School Report.
Good evening. It's very nice to see you here. You do have my report as submitted, but I just feel like I need to acknowledge the fact that we have, very sadly, we have lost 2 students this month, and that was Cesar Garcia and Hunter Camara. And it's just, it's a lot, obviously, for all families, friends, the staff. It's a lot for everyone to be kind of accommodating and processing all of that. And with all of the kids and the varying ages and understandings of what's been going on, I think everybody's pretty, I would say, stretched thin on that. So I just want to acknowledge that. And also, on a very different note, we had a very successful turkey trot yesterday. A lot of running and happiness, and that was also very, very nice to see. And the rest of my report you have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I believe a board member's daughter was a turkey winner also.
Cloverdale High School and JEH Continuation High School Report.
Hello, everyone. You have my report as submitted.
Thank you.
Thank you. L, Special Education and Student Services Report.
And you also have my report as submitted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. M, Educational Services Report.
I didn't want to be left out, but as submitted on mine as well.
I did have a question. On our reclassification ceremony that's happening tomorrow, November 21st, in the cafeteria at Jefferson at 6 p.m., how many students are being reclassified?
Yeah, about 40.
Okay. Congratulations.
Thank you. Well, I'm saying that like I didn't think, but
Congratulations.
we thank you.
Great. N, moving on to Maintenance, Operations, and Transportation Report. As submitted? Okay, as submitted. There we go. Okay, moving on to our Student Board Representative.
This past week has been particularly busy at CHS. Yesterday, ASB members created a thankful tree in one of our main hallways where students got to write what they were thankful and grateful for in leaves and stick it onto the tree. The first play of the school year was put on by the drama class over this past weekend. The play, called Rogues Gallery, was an entertaining story about a security investigation on bandits in an art gallery. On Monday, the school's fall sports came to a close with the annual sports banquet, awarding and recognizing numerous of our student athletes, which many will go on to playing our winter sports that just started, including basketball, soccer, and wrestling. And along with the past month, our FFA and agricultural classes have had many exciting events going on, like the building of a new greenhouse and farm animals coming to the school to have students engage and learn more about animal anatomy. And our Spanish and cultural classes were active in updating the multicultural bulletin board at the school, and students participated in making an altar in the library for the celebration of Dia de los Muertos and got to learn more about Spanish holidays that are commonly celebrated in our community.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. Moving on to our board reports. Trustee Addison.
I attended Measure H, and we qualify for more monies from the state than we thought initially, and it'll be sometime in 2025 when those monies come in, but it's a significant amount more. The investment in, I think, King's time, that's our consultant, is really paying off. We also have our permit process going through with the state, Division of State Architecture for the classrooms, and we've qualified for all those funds from the state. And again, that was a process that we did with King Consulting and Van Pelt to, basically where those classrooms are being almost paid for entirely by the state dollars. I also did the CARE meeting, and this month CARE received their funds from the Rotary Tour Divine, where they run a rest stop, and we approved several grants for programs in our schools. And CARE continues to raise money and look for new active members to come help them out. And that's it.
Thank you. Trustee Lopez White.
Last week, I attended both our SARB meeting and the Measure H. In SARB, we had quite a few referrals, so we just focused on the high school because there were so many there. What I will say was nice that we had a lot of students and families join us, and I believe we want to thank Juana for all of her help reaching out, so thank you, Juana. It was nice to have in SARB actually talking to families, because a lot of times they don't show up, so it was nice. Again, as usual, I think it's a great team. Nicole's doing a great job, and I think we're really seeing the push for attendance this year, and it's going well. Measure H, Trustee Addison reported on that, and I think we'll talk about it more coming up, so I won't say anything else on that. I was at the turkey trot, and that was fun. There was a lot of kids running, and I believe that was it. I think that's all.
Thank you. Trustee Garrison.
I was unable to attend CARE, but thankfully Trustee Addison was. And at the Eagle Pride Boosters meeting, there was lots of coaches' funding requests, and they were approved, and those funds, or the requests are approved if they have funds in, I guess, their little booster bucks, and they earn those by putting on fundraisers. So they have a little bit more buy-in when they have their funding requests, because they have to earn their money in order to spend their money. And that is it.
Thank you. Trustee Candelaria Ort.
I feel like I'm an as submitted, but there's nothing to submit. I don't have anything to report.
Thank you. This month, I attended the Special Education Parent Night. Thank you so much, Nicole, for all of the presenters that were here and all of the useful information about the IEP process, or the Individual Educational Plan process, which is complicated and convoluted sometimes, but it's good. And I also attended the DLAC meeting that we had, and Officer Rhodes came and was there to meet all of the families, and he was very much so welcomed, and had lots of questions, and yeah, that was it. That was the majority of the meeting. And that's the end of my report. Moving on to superintendent report. Yeah, superintendent report.
Yeah, that's me.
Okay.
So in the packet, you got our updated letter from the county, which is good news, that our budget was approved based on our last meeting that we had. And also, there's some other parts in there too that we will be getting to in the next month too. So we're going to be start having those discussions regarding trying to come up with a plan to be able to address these things and such too. So this is going to be an ongoing situation that we have. So that was good news on that part. Second thing is that, yeah, you want to put that up there? I'm going to go up to that thing up there. So in our board governance handbook, it does talk about that about this time of the year we would update the board on the, I feel like I'm up there, it's like, okay, hey, there was a guy that walked into a bar. I'm just kidding. want to update everybody on the attendance. Now, my months are going to be different than the months that the schools are going to give you, because our months are based on a 4-week maximum. So some of ours, like in month 1, might have been part of August, part of September, right? So the numbers might be a little bit off. One thing I've always said, and I've said it in this district too, is that school districts can't really garner more money, right? We can't really go out and sell different products, everything like that too, that maybe a private sector would be able to do. One way we can increase our income is by increasing our attendance. And I would just say that every staff member in this district has really had a focus on trying to increase the attendance. We all know since the pandemic, people have just taken a little bit different view to attendance. And so these numbers are actually pretty phenomenal, to be honest with you. And it's not one person's doing. I know we've been pushing a lot of stuff out to the parents with the importance of attendance, but it's really showing. And so if you can see here, it just kind of breaks it down. I know it's probably hard for you to see, but the totals here, we have about 95%, almost 96% attendance. We budgeted for 93%. That's been our average over the last few years. So this is good news. And I told you, I can't remember the exact number, but each percent is a significant amount of dollars. So that's excellent news. And so anyway, going across here, you'll see that it stays above 93, around 94. It's dipping a little bit. We do have certain, we're starting to see some patterns and some different grade levels and things like that too that we're going to start attacking a little bit. I shouldn't say attacking is not right, but start hitting a little bit more messaging with certain grade levels and things like that too. For example, we noticed that in the high school, the 11th graders are having poor attendance. So we're going to start maybe targeting some of those to be able to increase those attendance. So anyway, just wanted to give you this as an update, where my plan is to just add a month each time so we can kind of see what's going on. But this is truly, this is just work that everybody's been doing. And so, I think it shows on our focus for that. So, and anyway, any questions with those things, either from you guys or anything like that?
Should be about 150,000 a percent.
Yeah, I think that's about right. I think that's a good job.
So that's an FTE for every percent.
Yeah, exactly.
In.
Yeah. Perfect.
Is it pretty common most school years? Like, I see the first month it was stronger and we've dipped down a little bit, but I feel like, is that pretty common every school year?
I think so.
It just stronger.
Yeah, but I don't consider it a major swing.
Yeah.
We have had some unusual things happen,
Right.
that could lead to it also. But yeah,
mean,
it's just really, it's one of those things that there's really no patterns necessarily, kind of all over the place, especially with the unified district, right, when you got from all the way from TK up. So, yeah, for sure. All right?
Thank you.
What's better for the, I'm not even, is it better for me to be up here so I can be seen, or on my seat? Either way. Okay, that's great. So as was mentioned earlier, we have a couple of board members who are going off the board. And as you guys know, or if you don't know, some of you are going to find out pretty quickly. It's not an easy job to do, and it requires dedication and commitment to this. And so as a school district, we got you a little plaque. And Gabby will be happy that I spelled her name correctly, so that's good. It just says, and it says each one of them, it says an appreciation for your years of dedication to the students, staff, and community of Cloverdale. So, Gabriella, would you like to come up and get this? Yeah, come on up. And you probably could say a few words. Do you have anything planned? Any notes written? Okay. Just check. You're welcome. And I believe you served one term, is that correct? Yes. And then the next one is for Preston Addison, who's been a board member since 2016. So Preston?
Moving on to report and discussion. Measure H update. As submitted.
Okay, that's me too. All right. Yes, as submitted, except for I do have one other thing. We are looking at, and we talked about this at the last, or a few board meetings ago, that we were looking at a line of sight issue in the locker room and at the Washington School gym. And so we have a contract here to get that through Wright Contracting for $79,171. My understanding is, and maybe Ashley and Preston could say a little bit better, is that this is actually still falls under is it the gym contract that we've got? That there's still money that we've that's still left in that to be able to cover this. So that's why it's not being asked to be reapproved, because it's already been approved for the amount. This is just going to be an additional to that part. And if you're not familiar with that, it is basically just a line of sight issue with the locker rooms, both the girls and the boys. So we're going to kind of
Reconfigure the doorway.
reconfigure the doorway and the entrances into those. And anyway, so I just want to let you know, and Wright Construction will be continuing to do that, and I believe they're going to do it about, is it Christmas?
Yeah.
Christmas time.
They're
They're
gonna
going to
do
do
it
it during the
over-
Christmas break. So.
Yeah, over Christmas break. And those were contingency funds that weren't spent but had been approved.
Thank you, appreciate that. And then the rest of it is, which everybody else talked about, the Measure 8 updates.
R2, Early Education Facilities Project update.
And again, that was part of Preston's.
R3,
Yeah, and so the Cloverdale property update, we're going to have, that is on, but a part of that's going to be on our S2. We'll talk a little bit about that. But I haven't done anything with that, and we will start another discussion of that, or at least have a discussion of that when our new board members come in, so we can get them up to speed as well.
perfect. Music program, R4.
Shauna has met with some people, so she has something that maybe she would like to add to that. Nobody else wants to make eye contact with me right now. You didn't.
Yes, I've had a couple of meetings with Ken Collins, and fantastic meetings. He's really dedicated, and so we came up with a plan, and what we've done so far is he has a plan for what he would like to teach. He wants to teach some after-school music classes, and I think it's a fabulous idea, starting with 5th grade. If we can't fill up each section with 5th graders, then we will also move up. We'll go to 6th grade and see if we can fill it out. So we're going to have flutes, clarinets, trumpets, and we were thinking maybe drums, but that might not work now. Ken also came to the high school, and he was able to find all of the instruments, and then we went into 6A at Washington. He was able to find all of the books, so we're kind of gathering all of the things. Now, we have a lot of things, but some of them are in disrepair. So he's going to be working on fixing that sort of thing, and our goal is to start this in mid-January. So he would be doing approximately 19 weeks of classes, and I'm very excited about it. And I think the kids are going to be excited as well. I met today with Joanne Parker from CARE, and I told her, we went over kind of what we think the cost will be and things like that, and she was very positive about it, and we're going to talk again. But she feels as though we'll be able to make it happen. That wasn't a promise or anything, but she thought it was a promising idea.
So are we expecting, like, students to not, families not have to pay anything at cost? Or are we thinking a much reduced or,
No cost.
wow, okay.
And I think what we talked about, that me and the admin team talked about, was just, let's pilot something. Let's not just dive in, right? Let's pilot something to see what kind of interest we get, and then we'll see if we need to expand it from there or not. And like Shauna said, he seems to be pretty willing, so it really is a good situation for that, so, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank
And we will continue to update you guys on that.
Thank you. S, discussion and action item. S1, consideration and acceptance of donations, and we would like to publicly acknowledge all of our donations. So Ohio Piley Prince Incorporated donated $68.01 to Cloverdale High School. LH Colt donated $100 to Washington Art Class. Anonymous donation of $220 to Washington Art Class. Leanne Henry donated $150 to her classroom. And Grocery Outlet of Cloverdale donated $550 to Washington softball program. Thank you so much for all of your donations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'll move to approve the acceptance of the donations.
I'll second.
So I have a motion by Trustee Lopez White and a second by Trustee Candelaria Orr of the acceptance of donations. Preferential?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And no one's absent. S2, consideration and possible approval of Resolution 225-06, declaration of intention to convey an easement for public utility purposes and publication of notice thereof.
All right, back up here again, get my steps in. Okay, so if you're familiar at all with where the south property is, you want to zoom in a little bit more on that, just so I can get, not in, but like away. No, the other way.
Zoom out.
Zoom out, thank you. So this running right here is Cloverdale, I don't know if it's Cloverdale Boulevard or Dutcher Creek at this point, but, and then you've got, God, I had this all memorized
Kelly
too, and now I
Road.
totally forgot. Kelly Road, thank you. Kelly Road going in here, and then our property actually is a little piece right here that they were for an easement or for access into our property. So what the project over here is, the Dry Creek Rancheria is asking us, well, let me back up. PG&E is, what they're doing is they're taking all the power that goes into the Rancheria and it's going to be underground. So all of these wires that are on the west side of the pole are going to be coming off. So right now we've got power lines into this pole that are going every direction. So naturally, when you take off one side, you're going to have to put a guy wire in somewhere in order to be able to deal with the tension. So what they're proposing to do and what they're asking us to do, and the reason we have to do it in two different board meetings, is they're asking us to do an easement from this pole back, I believe it's 20 feet, and I think a 5-foot swath. So a 5-foot by 20 feet easement that's right there. So if you go out there now, this picture was taken previously, there will be a sidewalk that goes around here. And so that area that they're asking the easement wouldn't be nothing really that we would ever use per se, as far as that goes. And so, but since we're deeding access and deeding an easement as a public institution, it needs to be at one meeting. And then after this meeting, if you approve to do that, then we have to put it in the paper for 2 weeks, and then we have to come back to be able to approve it. So it requires 2 regular board meetings. The tribe the Rancheria has generously donated for us, or not donated, but agreed to, because putting it in the paper for 2 weeks is rather expensive, so they're going to pick up the tab to be able to put that in there. I know that we could ask for compensation on that. However, I feel like with them burying those lines into that street, it gives us pretty good, it brings up the power to us. And I think we kind of benefit from that part, is my opinion. And so, anyway, questions about that, or if questions about how I explained it. We have one more picture also I don't know if the picture was any different or not.
I mean, there
But-
should be some remuneration involved, otherwise it's a gift of public property. I did this recently on a private property for a PG&E and easement, and the private party that received the benefit of having that easement was asked to pay $80,000. So this is for a whole community's power. That was for one home, to give an easement about 20 feet long, same sort of thing. So that's kind of the going rate of remuneration, and we've invested a lot into this property. So if we're giving up easements, we should be getting compensation for that.
And I'm just bringing it in front of you. I did talk to legal and ask them about that. They felt, or one of those pieces, can we ask for that? And she felt like, or they felt like it was a good, it's for the greater good in the community. And also the fact that I'm not disagreeing with you, I'm just saying what they had said, that we are getting some improvements to our own property by bringing, by their project, bringing the utilities to us for that part.
Is Kelly Road going to be paved, which would be?
It's already
something-
paved. Right, as of right now, it's paved.
Will there be sidewalks on both sides?
That I don't know, but I would assume early on it's probably just this side until the other side gets developed, would be my guess. But I don't know that answer.
Well, typically for that, the sidewalk's going to be on our property, and usually the property owner, unless negotiated with who's putting in the road, is going to be responsible for the sidewalk cost. But we went through this with the Baumgartner development. We had negotiated site work from them, and this wasn't under your leadership at all. This happened previously, but it wasn't followed through on, and so we didn't get remuneration from them, yet we're incurring a lot of stormwater coming from that property, which makes our property more difficult to deal with. So I really think some remuneration is due if we're gifting public property to a major development.
My question was going to be, is there any compensation that we're getting? And, I mean, you stated what the attorney said, and then trustee Addison stated what he knows for private going rate is. So I don't know what their timeline is and what they would be willing to offer, or if we want to come up with something. That's why I was asking, like, okay, if we can have the road get paved or sidewalks put in, like, that's something that would benefit both of us.
Yeah, it could be in-kind donation and work actually done, but that would have to be part of the written agreement, because we didn't have it as part of the written
Or it can't be
agreement
found.
before, and then it never happened, or we can't find the written agreement. So, you know, if a private party was paying $80,000 for an easement for one home, I think it's $40,000 to $80,000 for every home that's benefiting from having that power put underground is a very reasonable ask.
What's their timeline of when they,
My understanding is their timeline's pretty tight. We got this pretty late in the game. So for that, I think I was going to say, I thought somebody was coming. Yeah, you want to come up? This is I believe the engineer that's working on the project. Is that correct? Yes. You want to state your name for everybody?
Happy to. Hello, trustees and Ms. President. My name is Kevin Doble. I'm with Lako Associates. I'm representing the Dry Creek Tribe. I've been working on this project since 2018. The tribe has, I think the last time I was before you was several years ago when we came to you to work about getting an annexation. So the tribe actually paid to have the property annexed into the city of Cloverdale. Also, the public improvements that are being constructed are to the benefit of all the properties that actually access Kelly Road. It's about $5 million worth of public improvements. Just to clarify, the easement is not for the tribe. The easement is required by PG&E in order to underground the lines, which actually serve all of the properties along Kelly Road. So this would not necessarily be a gift of funds to another entity. This would actually just be an ability for PG&E to underground the lines. If the lines are not undergrounded, at this time, should the district decide to develop your property, those lines would have to be undergrounded as a condition of the city and PG&E. So the tribe is paying for the undergrounding of these lines. PG&E is requiring the easement. We just found out about this about a month ago, that they needed easement for this guy wire that just basically supports the pole. The lines are already undergrounded. All of the construction is basically complete. The project is set to be completed in its entirety by the end of December. And we just need PG&E to flip the switch so that all of our properties have access to the power that runs up Kelly Road.
But the district doesn't fall under the city's jurisdiction. We fall under the Division of State Architecture. So even though the city may require lines to be undergrounded, and I've been involved in several subdivisions in town where they waive that, they don't require you to put it underground. And apparently there's many more properties benefiting from this easement besides just the tribe upstream. So again, and we have access on the other side. The Baumgartner development has developed that road. Foothill extends down to our property. So we already have access in. This is something that this district has invested in, the entire community through Measure H funds invested in, and we shouldn't be giving away district property without remuneration.
I'm just required to bring it in front of you. So we're in the beginning stages, so if we choose not to do this, that's fine. I can go back and talk about stuff with them for that. This is pretty new to me, I will tell you that, in this part. I serve with the pleasure of the board, so I can take back whatever you like as your spokesperson.
So I'll offer that, I'm here for another month as the elected trustee. I have a lot of experience with this. I can help negotiate it to the district's benefit so that we do this right.
So if I'm understanding this easement is for PG&E. It's PG&E's easement. It's not the Rancheria's easement or anything else. How does liability work on an easement if something were to happen? Like, how do I explain this?
I mean, like if somebody was to hit that
pole, do we share liability if there's an easement, or if there's no easement, does it fall on?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah, I can answer that. One of the reasons PG&E is actually requiring an easement is because they have to assume all the liability within that space. The other thing is that the easement really is a small piece of land that does not impact your property. For instance, if the power lines were not undergrounded and the tribe just stopped their project for whatever reason, PG&E would still require under the Rule 20 that those power lines be undergrounded. So it would be a discussion between the PUC and the school district, not between the city as a condition of approval. Also, the road itself and where the poles lie would impact where the sidewalk would be in the future. And they would have to either be moved or the power would need to be undergrounded. So there's a lot of mechanics along this one line. If you look at the photograph, you can see the line of poles that runs down in that area. Those are actually going to be removed. The road is built, and all the district is going to need to consider is a sidewalk in the future. The reason it wasn't designed that way at this point is because we did not know what the needs were for the district in terms of developing that property. So I think I can't speak for the tribe as it relates to negotiating, but I can say that there's opportunities for the tribe to work with the district in the future to work out like what configuration maybe the sidewalk would be. For instance, if you had designs for how you wanted to enter the property from Kelly Road, I'm sure the tribe would sit down with you and talk about what that might mean. At this point, the tribe is at a point where they have funding available. They have to complete their project by the end of January in order to actually occupy the homes and receive the funding. That's been the catalyst for this project all along. So any delays beyond tonight or the next meeting really put the whole project in jeopardy, and potentially everything might stop. So all the work that's been conducted, we just basically have a road there that's not accepted by the city yet. There's also a $2 million sewer lift station that actually serves your property, because the school district property cannot get sewer to the north without the lift station that's been constructed. So I think there's opportunity to talk about all of that. What we're asking for is PG&E is requiring an easement for this guy wire. It's an easement dedicated to PG&E. PG&E assumes responsibility for the area within that space. The tribe really has nothing to do with it other than they want to see the power get turned on.
Is that lift station sized to handle a school?
Yes, it was designed to actually handle what we considered a large school.
Bad luck giving me the thing, I just gotta hand it back to you. No, that's okay.
And where's this dispute regarding whether the Kelly Road is a county road or a city road?
That actually has been resolved. So I want to say back in sometime around July, early summer, the city or the county dedicated that parcel of land to the city, and the city accepted it. So that allowed us to get the encroachment permit, which is the permit from the city to build the public improvements. The city's been inspecting the improvements. They're going to accept the improvements at some point, and then it'll be a full public street. So yeah, a lot of work has gone into like piecing all of these things together in this area that's kind of been languishing for a long time. So the housing project is really the catalyst to bring these improvements to South Cloverdale that, quite frankly, over the last 20 years, no developer's really been willing to put out that kind of money to actually build these improvements to benefit all of those properties. But a not-for-profit entity or government entity like the tribe is willing to do it because they need housing for their seniors.
And also, putting all of the power lines underground is also something, fire safety is like a huge plus, right? We have fire season, so making sure that everything's underground is.
Yeah. And I will add, if I need the mic, I can use it. But
Which is coming standard.
yeah. Thanks. This section of Kelly Road, there's two definitions of through PG&E in the Public Utilities Code for public utilities. So the stretch along Kelly Road falls under Rule 20, which is a total public improvement. Anyone can connect to it with a connection permit from PG&E. It's been sized to serve the school district property and the commercial properties to the south. When we get on site, it's a separate, it's not Rule 20. It's not public utility. It's a public utility serving private property. So for instance, if you were to develop your school site or develop this property in any fashion and needed power, at the edge of the right-of-way, you'd be outside of the Rule 20 and you'd have your own power agreement with PG&E. Still be a public utility, but they only bring it to the meter. So this is under Rule 20. It's governed by the Public Utilities Commission. So really the basis for the requirement is so PG&E can state for a fact that they actually have responsibility over that area that's been granted to them as an easement. They won't do it because they're worried. If, let's say they constructed it and didn't have an easement, then there could be a dispute between the property owner if something were to happen in that area. In this case, that resolves that on the front end, and they do not issue, they won't power up the project without an easement because they want to make sure they avoid those things in the future.
Okay.
And just to be clear to your question earlier, Ashley, about PG&E easement, all the PG&E lines around here, that's what they do. It doesn't matter whose property it goes over, they get an easement. In the past, in ancient history, they didn't necessarily have those easements in place.
They don't
and
have one now.
They have problems, so the proper thing to do is for them to try and get an easement in place. So now PG&E's a stickler about getting an easement before this sort of improvement is done, but it's standard practice everywhere that PG&E is operating.
Yeah, and I will add that the overhead lines that are there currently, they're not in an easement.
Right.
So-
A lot of these things happened a long time ago.
Yeah.
And easements weren't there. But
Exactly.
now, standard practice is.
Yeah, and
they
I
need to
think
get
it's
that
the
easement.
responsible thing to do as an agency to make sure you clear up any issues of liability. It's also interesting because the access off of Kelly Road in that area crosses your property, so you have total control over whether you put a driveway there or not. Right now, I know that there are vehicles maybe driving across it, but that's another property's issue. If you were to want access through that area, you would have total control over what happens in that area. Again, the reason the sidewalk wasn't put on the north side yet was because we didn't know what was necessary for the school, and the school hasn't really developed an idea of what you might want to do, at least publicly, and from my understanding. It doesn't make sense to build 800 feet of sidewalk and then have it all torn out to build something different.
So all of the lines past that pole that we see, those are all being removed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, all of the poles are going to be gone, and the only pole left standing is this one. The reason it's being left standing is because it takes a wire from across the freeway.
Yeah.
And it's a long run, so they need the guy wire to actually support the pole once the other wires are removed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consideration and possible approval of Resolution 22506, Declaration of Intention to convey an easement for public utility purposes and publication of notice thereof.
Are we done discussing?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I paused.
We can take the second motion and then continue discussions and questions.
I'll second the motion, and then we can continue discussion.
So I have a motion by trustee Candelaria Orr and a second by trustee Lopez White. I think it's a good overall thing to be able to do, and it sounds like we would be able to continue to partner in the future with the neighboring properties around our property or around the south property. And overall, in looking at the safety of everyone, it is something that will keep everybody around that property safe.
Well, I would agree, but if you don't have it in writing, it's not worth anything. And if you don't have the check in the bank, it's not worth anything. The district did a lot of research on this property before they bought it because we knew it would have value. We knew that both these developments were coming down the pipeline. And I think it's a gift of public funds without remuneration. And if people wanted to be partners, then why weren't we involved? We have civil drawings for that property. We have a lot of plans that have been drawn up, invested time and money in, and a 95% idea of where the curb, gutter, and sidewalk could go. So had they come and partnered with us before they had a need, we could have worked together as partners. But the people are only coming to the door because they want a free handout when their need came up. So I don't put much value in that supposed offer of a partnership. It's not worth anything unless it's in paper, signed, agreed to.
And if I recall, or anybody else, questions? If I recall, maybe I'm not recalling correctly, the partner, the tribe, has definitely done some, didn't they provide us with some donations and do some work on the south property? as an in-kind?
Donations, yes. I don't know about the in-kind South property work as far as, I don't, mean like we had our fire, you mean? Is that what you mean? But that was,
No, that was something else.
was that before I was here? I don't
Do you guys
know.
remember? Because I remember having, like, they were talking about working on, I don't know if it was paving a road or something, where they did that for us and we talked about it
So
in a board meeting.
Ms. Bunting said she remembers something.
I remember something, but they, yeah.
That's what I remember.
And I believe it was to bring all the sewer to our property,
That's correct.
so that when we are ready, it's all ready to go.
Yeah.
So is the sewer undergrounded to the property now?
It is.
Where does it come up? I mean,
On
I would
the-
like to see those drawings.
It comes up actually just west of the creek.
That dry creek that runs through the property?
Yeah, the little creek that runs through your property and it kind of runs through the tribe's property under Kelly Road. It's just north of that. It's at the low point of the property. And it's a sewer lateral connection that connects to a manhole that can be connected to in the future.
And it's on our side of the road.
Yes.
I'd like to see those drawings.
I don't have
as a
them with
trustee.
me tonight.
No, but I'm just saying in general,
Yeah.
as a trustee, I'd like to see those.
Yeah, we'd be happy to share whatever information you want. We can also go out in the field and walk it and look at it. It's there. The tribe also constructed a 12-inch water main that loops through Kelly Road and through the south end of the property. That brings water all the way to the south end of Cloverdale. In addition to the sewer, it's also the lift station. And again, the tribe wouldn't be here asking for an easement if PG&E didn't say they need an easement for this guy wire. It was not expected. We're in the 11th hour of getting the power turned on for this project. The tribe stands to lose about $14 million in order, of funding for this project. I would also state that the Dry Creek Rancheria tribe is not a developer. They're a government agency. And also, the easement is not being dedicated to the tribe. We're just here to help facilitate the easement to PG&E, which is another government agency, just like the school district.
Well, and I think for me, I feel like this is a good faith gesture. On top of not only obviously some infrastructure being created for that property, we have no clue what we're going to be doing with that property. There have been secret reports, there have been obviously discussions and whatnot, but I think we're a ways off of even understanding what that property is going to look like, whether we're going to keep it or not, what we're going to develop it into. And so I feel like we need to go ahead with the easement. It just seems to be the best thing at this moment to be doing. Whether or not we get compensation for it, I think for me is a moot point. That's all.
I don't think it's going to be a moot point at your next month meeting when you're making cuts to staff.
So,
But this also is Measure H,
Well,
you know what I
yeah,
mean?
I don't
It's Measure
believe
H
this
money, it
is-
has nothing to do with
Sorry,
staffing.
if I may, I don't believe this is costing the school district.
No, I'm not saying it's costing the district anything, but I'm saying that it has value and the district should be remunerated for their property, and the district is under a very tight budget crunch. So here again is another poor financial decision being made.
But wouldn't any remuneration that we get from
Be
it have
Measure
to go
H.
back
Has to
to
stay to
Measure
Measure
H?
H.
So
Yeah.
it wouldn't help, it would just go back
Staffing.
into Measure H. It's not going to help with staffing or general fund because it's on the property that was
Correct.
purchased
I
by
don't know that for
Measure
sure.
H
I
money.
mean, that's a good question. I'd like to ask
no, I
that of
think
legal, for
that,
sure.
well, in the conversation of selling the property,
it would have to go
it
back
would
to
have to go to
Measure
Measure
H.
H.
So it would
True.
Any money incurred from property lines on this
Would be Measure H.
would be Measure H. But, so can I ask a procedural question, Mr. Sinistraro? You said this has to be done in 2 meetings, has to be approved. What happens if we approve it next meeting? We get the plans or the drawings of the sewage lines and what was discussed here,
And you don't approve it then?
and we don't,
It's not approved.
so we can approve it tonight and then find out everything is
it gives us some
Not
time.
what we
to-
thought. And I feel like this would be a good faith gesture. Approve it to keep your process going forward. In the meantime of between now and then, we get the rest of those questions answered.
This is
See,
just a
draw, you know what I
resolution
mean?
that we intend to convey
Okay.
an easement. And then it allows me to be able to go post it, so everybody we have to have a public hearing the next time. So this is just intending to.
Yeah.
So that's why it has to be two, because since we are deeding access of the property, right? The public has a right to be able to come and weigh in on that. And that's why it can't be done in one meeting, right? So, and that's why we have to, but I can't, I should say we can't put it in the paper to say we're going to do a thing without the board taking action to be able to
Right.
say we can do that. Correct, to convey that. So
Does
the
this
intent is
action have to happen at a regular board meeting?
Yes, that's why it takes 2 months. Correct. And I would say too, just if you notice, it does require at least no less than 2/3. So for us, that's not 3 out of 5, that would have to be 4 out of 5. Just wanted to, and I think the next one is either the same, or it might even be a super majority, which would be 4 out of 5, so either way, it's still the same. But yeah, so it is a 2-step process for that. So regardless of what we just decided, it still would be December 18th would be the soonest we could approve it. Correct. And I was just going to mention that once you guys got done, is I think it's fully, completely within, if you wanted to have, let's say, Preston and I meet with them, I have no issues with that. I think it's great. Matter of fact, I would suggest you put somebody else with me, because this is not my forte to do this. And we report back and everything like that too would be great. I don't have any issues with that. I think those are some good questions you guys are raising for that part.
And to the concern about where the money goes, Measure H money can be used for maintenance and upkeep of our buildings. Normally, some of that money is coming out of our general fund, and we don't have that in our general fund right now. We will have a need for this funding. So I'd still say I would ask the rest of the board to seriously consider where we are budgetarily, and that this is public property that we've put a lot of time and money into, and there should be remuneration for it. That's only fair to the taxpayers and the students of this district.
Well, I agree with that, but I also agree that the development from the Rancheria and what they've done has significantly improved the value of the property that we hold also.
It's
So, I
almost
mean, I
$6
would like
million.
to see, I mean, if we're talking about money incurred, or what the value
But
added
remember
to the
who
property has
we
been.
represent the district.
I understand
We have
that,
to get
and we
the
represent
most we can for our students and the people that elected us.
I agree, but I think part of that is being good partners with the adjacent properties and
And good
developers
partners
with
are
us.
invited at the table and at the table the whole time through the process. And we were not invited
Well,
until
they
there was
just
a need.
found out
I know.
about it, so I mean,
Yeah,
I
if-
don't think
if
that's
I-
a fair assumption.
Yeah, if I may speak to that, to the trustee, we've been working, we believe, with the district in good faith since 2018, our early meetings about the annexation, the commitment to build the public infrastructure that was needed to serve these properties was made, and it's been perfected. That was done in good faith. That was not, the tribe would not have.
We haven't heard any of that. We haven't seen plans. It hasn't been reported to us. So this is the first time since then that we're hearing maybe these things have been done. So I can't make an educated decision based on evidence because we haven't been informed and updated that these things are happening.
I understand that, but I don't believe, we've been communicating with the district fairly regularly on items
Then the
that were
district
important.
hasn't been communicating with the trustees, but I'm telling you as a
That's what I'm
trustee,
saying.
I don't have that information in front of me to make an educated decision,
Okay, so.
wherever the process is breaking down.
I think there's opportunity to move this forward because this is just a noticing action. I think there's an opportunity for the tribe to meet with the district and whoever representatives they want to bring forward and have those conversations. There's a month between this meeting and the next meeting. It's very important for the tribe. They're at $6 million of public improvements. If another $80,000 is being requested by the school district just so PG&E can have an easement to provide public services to the property, I can't answer whether they would entertain that, but I will definitely report that back to the tribe. Again, the tribe's not a developer. They're not deep pockets. They're a government agency. They're a government entity. So they're not going anywhere. They're going to be the neighbors for a long, long time. They're just trying to serve their population as well. They have a tremendous amount of elders who do not have housing. They've invested a lot of money to build this project. So much so that no developer has ever been willing to build the improvements that the tribe has built to serve these properties for the last 22 years. I've been working on this project, my family's been working on this project in Cloverdale for 20 years. No developer has ever come along and agreed to build $6 million of improvements for 25 houses. But the tribe did it because it's important to them and it's important to their tribal elders that they have homes. That's what this is about. So if there was some lack of communication with the trustees on this, I'm sorry. It wasn't intentional. This project has been moving forward. There's a lot of people working on it. There's been a lot of effort. The previous superintendent had met with us multiple times. We've come before this board multiple times. I don't believe the school district has ever spent $1 to see this actually come to this point. So I also don't believe it's a gift of public funds because it's just an easement so that PG&E takes over the responsibility for what happens within that area. This is not between the tribe.
It's a gift of an easement on public property. I said a gift of
It
public
is, but
property, not funds.
It's not a gift of property, it's an encumbrance. You're not transferring title. There's no dollar amount associated with this. You're giving PG&E the rights to access your property, and they're taking responsibility for whatever happens within that area.
But if you go ask any property owner in Cloverdale for an easement on their property, a PG&E easement for a guy wire into their yard, they're going to have some second thoughts about that.
Is where the poles are located already on our property?
Yes,
So therefore, they're already on our property. It's just
so are the
having
wires.
it relocated in a different way.
That's correct. It's actually, right now, there are 2 poles that are on your property. And there's a wire between those 2 poles. There is no easement. Whatever happens within that area is the school district's responsibility. That wire is coming down, the pole is coming down, and there's just a stabilizing wire that extends 20 feet out from the existing pole closest to Cloverdale Boulevard. It's actually reducing the impact on the area, and I believe reducing the liability for the school district, because the school district's not going to have to be responsible for something happening while they're maintaining that area.
Thank you.
But the wire and the poles are coming out regardless. That's not on the district.
They aren't. If this doesn't move forward, they stay, and the
Without-
project stops.
Without an easement, and all liability is on the school district.
Yes, the project stops.
There's a lot of ways to move this forward rather than giving public property.
Again, it's not a grant deed of public property. It's an encumbrance. It's just a space in which PG&E is allowed to
everybody, if you
operate.
asked for an easement in their yard, which is just a grant deed, would say, we're giving up the ability to use that 25 feet of our yard.
You're not
because
giving that
we've
up.
given an easement there.
You just can't build a building between the pole and the guy wire. That's
That
it.
would be giving it up in my definition of buildable, usable space.
You're also getting power, you're getting sewer, you're getting water, and you're getting a free public street. And you got annexed into the city of Cloverdale, which increased the property value for the district. None of that happens
And
without this project.
all of those were negotiated prior, and this
It
is a
wasn't
new-
negotiated, it was
this is-
agreed to.
This is a new additional request of district property.
Yeah,
This is a new request.
this just came
All
to our
those other
attention.
things were already happening
This is a request from PG&E.
based on the previous agreements.
If the tribe had the ability, they wouldn't ask you for an easement. This is PG&E requiring it in order to turn power on to serve the properties. That's all it is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any more questions?
No, I just would like to request that we get information.
Yeah.
And Trustee Addison and Superintendent Sinistraro can work together to look at the lines and the drawings of the property and what has been done. I would just like to see the improvements that have been made and the cost of those and how that has benefited our property. And if we could look at it in a monetary value, if that makes sense
Yes. Putting dollar signs.
with it,
Yep.
I think if I could make a suggestion, I think 2 board members would be helpful for this, just to get some different eyes on it. I think it would be good, not that I just think it would be good to have a couple different, because this is an important thing, and so I think it would be good to be hard to put it on one person.
Well, I'm on Measure H, so.
Okay, and I was going to say I wouldn't mind as a continuing board member as well, so if you want anything taken off your plate, like, I'm
That's
happy
fine.
also.
I don't mind, I'm on Measure H, so it makes
Okay.
sense, but.
I'd also like to say thank you for coming and giving, especially background whenever it comes to someone who's only been on the board for 2 years and who hasn't been part of the whole process of the South property. It's at least nice to get some more information because there hasn't been necessarily a lot disseminated on it from that perspective. So I just want to say thank you.
Would I reach out to you? Would I reach out to you?
David and myself.
Okay,
And they can set up a meeting anytime.
Great.
when they make themselves available.
awesome, thank you. But we still have to vote first.
With that, I have a motion by Trustee Candelaria Orr and a second by Trustee Lopez White. Any other discussion? Preferential?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
And no one is absent. S3, consideration and possible approval of revised board policy 6146.1, high school graduation requirements.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
So I've come previously twice about the graduation requirements. So this is a summary of what we've talked about. We're adding 10 credits to social studies. That meets the state's ethnic studies requirement. And then we are clarifying that 20 of the 80 credits for electives is specifically in CTE. So you can see at the bottom, it brings our graduation requirements up from 238 to 248.
And that ethnic studies would be the ones that we're required to put in, is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
By next school year, we need to offer ethnic studies. So I believe what Kathleen said is in the graduating class of 2029, this will be the graduation requirement. So in Aries, if you go to the grad track screen that like counselors and administrators have access to, currently there are 2 grad tracks, which is your regular graduation requirement, which is our current grad requirements, and then the 130 grad requirement, which is the California minimum. So students that are McKinney-Vento students, so homeless, foster, incarcerated youth after their sophomore year, things like that, go on that grad requirement track. And so if this were be approved, we would have a 3rd grad requirement track, and then once we finish with graduating the class of 2028, that will become the new normal track.
Sorry, guys. And your plan is to put that in the freshman curriculum, right, for the...
That's kind of the nice thing is we currently have Modern California as a freshman social studies class. It's an elective as opposed, so it's a G in the A through G, and we're going to change that to an A for social studies. Social studies teachers already teach it. Kevin McCammon, our social studies teacher, has been going to the SCO trainings. He's going to one the first week of December when we get back. Learning about the 4 principles for the ethnic studies course, so we can integrate that when we retool Modern California to have that ethnic studies focus.
Thank you. And I appreciate Ms. Kathleen Bunting over here doing the red line and the cleanup version and the current version of our board policies that outline everything that you have in your one sheet. So thank you
Yeah.
for doing that.
Kathleen has been great.
Yeah.
And since this is board policy, we can always change it in the future, correct? Our grad requirements, whether.
Well, it's not board policy yet.
Correct, but,
No. If we approve it,
right, and then
Then we
since it's already a board policy and you update it, it just takes one meeting instead of having two, because it's an existing policy. But yes, it's always able to be changed.
okay.
So a couple just technical things. The numbering is off. It goes 1, 2, 2, and on the other one it goes 1, 2, 3, 3. And then on our A through Fs, if we look at E, sometimes called 4, but really 5,
What page?
122. It says 1 year of language other than English or visual performing arts. The E of the A through G, I'm assuming the letters refer to A through G.
Correct.
The
So,
E of A through G is 2 years of language other than English. So is that what we meant to say here?
no.
Or 1 year of language other than English?
So actually, if you look at this poster in our College and Career Center, you'll see the A through G kind of letters. There is,
We can't.
okay, from, if you
I'm
stand
visioning
over here.
what you're saying.
There's the minimum that you need to graduate, and then there's what you need for a Cal State or a CSU. So for example, our minimum graduation requirements for math is 2 years, but if you're going straight to a four-year university, particularly a competitive four-year university, you need at least 3 years. So with our minimum of 1 year in Spanish, which is our foreign language, that will get you to the graduation requirement. But if you're getting into a more competitive Cal State or a UC, you should take really 3 years plus.
So does the E, the F, the G correspond to some portion of the A through G?
Yeah. So if you look here, like the A's are for social studies, the B's are English. So when you're talking E, you're talking language other than English. They say it like that because you could do sign language, for example, as a language other than English. An F is performing arts, and then a G is your electives. So almost all of our electives are considered G. There's a few that aren't, like directed studies or some special ed courses that aren't A through G, but almost all of our classes are A through G. So if you look at all of our classes that we have, probably 98% of them fall in one of these categories.
So it just was confusing. I was trying to parse out what this was with E and F on here because both of them mention
Visual.
a language other than English, or foreign. One of them calls it foreign language, one of them calls it a language other than English, and they both mention visual or performing arts.
It's an A through G thing because this is how the state lays it out in the A through G. So with the A, B, C, D, it's all pretty straightforward. And then when you get into the E and F, it kind of depends on how far you go in order to build your resume to go to college.
So to graduate, you could take drama for your E, and drama a second year for your F, and you'd cover both those requirements by taking drama 2 years?
Yeah, I believe that's true. Because
That's I'm just trying.
yes,
It's
that's
not
true because they changed
clear.
that to be able to allow the kid to not just do a foreign language. They could do the performing arts, visual performing arts in lieu of. Correct.
Okay, I
But
just
you-
or somebody could take 2 years of a
Correct.
language and they'd meet the E and the F in our
Correct.
graduation
But the only
requirements.
thing you couldn't do is take it once to kill them both. You'd have to do it twice.
Okay,
Yeah.
now I understand.
Very
I just, when I was looking at the A through E and this, it was not totally clear. The catch-all, there's like 59 categories of person that doesn't actually have to meet our graduation requirements to get a diploma. Is that required to be in our board policy? It's not currently, it's not in Santa Rosa's, it's not in Rohnert Park's. So where we have exemptions from our graduation requirements, are we required to have those exemptions? We haven't, and the other districts I've been researching this week don't have this in their policy.
Trying to think of where you're seeing that.
Page 122. It's,
Exemptions.
the heading is exemptions from district-adopted graduation requirements. It just, there's a whole
one.
plethora of people that can graduate from our district with a diploma doing half the number of credits that we require practically, roughly, quick, easy math.
I don't know if it's required or not. I would have to check on that. I do not know that answer.
Yeah, because
But I do know that the state does have certain eligibility requirements that if you meet, like Forrest talked about earlier, that it does allow you to be able to change your requirements for that.
I guess, why would you not want to have the exemptions listed? What's the pro versus the con? on
well,
it?
if it were me, I would think that $100 is $100. A graduation diploma from Cloverdale High means you've met Cloverdale High's graduation requirements. We used to give a certificate if you're graduating without meeting the requirements, not a diploma. So if you get a Cloverdale High diploma, my opinion is you should meet our graduation requirements. Or you can go get a GED if you don't want to meet those requirements. But there's this whole catch-all of students that only have to meet close to half our
But that- isn't
requirements and
that-
they still get a diploma.
Those
That-
are the
Mr.
assembly bills, like Assembly Bill 132
That's
for
law.
migrant youth, incarcerated youth.
But it's not been in our
Military-
board policy before.
But
And
that-
it's
that's
not
ed code.
in other schools in the county's board policy.
Those students are qualified for the California minimum.
But it's not in our board policy currently.
Correct. Kathleen just brought it up here too. So on the CSBA has a note here that says that Education Code 51225.1 requires the district to exempt any district adopted graduation requirements that are in addition to the state requirements specified as a foster. Then it lists a bunch of them that we just talked about. So I have a feeling, I don't know when the last time this policy was approved, but I have a feeling that these have been things that have been added to it since we last approved it, which would have been in 2023, it looks like. But it does specifically talk about foster youth, homelessness, juvenile court students, child of a military family,
Military,
migrant students
migrant.
transfer, and so on.
And so
So-
just my
so-
question in researching it wasn't in our policy before, and I went and looked at many districts' policies,
It
and
was,
they don't
though.
have it.
If you look at page 127, that's the old policy.
If you go online to our official district policy, it is not in it.
My understanding would be in this case, and I see what you're saying, but my thing would be is that I think that it'd be one of
You're
those
sorry.
things where if a kid qualifies
Official
for it, it would
district
trump the board policies as
That's
far
our
as
board
that, because I don't
policy.
think we could keep him from graduating if he met those requirements. So I think what it does is it enumerates those specific exemptions in the policy rather than not. And what I could use, for example, would be is that, let's say we have, let's use the minimum wage, if we have a cell that's below the minimum wage, we don't have to go in and require to change that, we can't pay them below the minimum wage, right? So that would, the law would then trump kind of what's there. But I think it's, my opinion would be, I think it's up to the board to decide if they want to keep the exemptions in there. However, I
It's
think
not
the
in our current
exemptions would
policy.
still exist because it's law.
So I'm just still,
And my only thing would be about, for the other two that you talked about, was maybe they haven't updated it since that changed, or maybe they decided not to do it, not to enumerate it in their board policies, but yet, I don't believe you can not do it because it's not in our board policies. Does that make sense?
correct.
Yeah.
But the board doesn't necessarily have to adopt it as part of their policy, which, based on my research, most boards aren't adopting this in Sonoma County as part of their policy. It doesn't change the law that you
Correct.
as the administrator have to follow when you're putting people forward for graduation. but the board doesn't have to, we may have to have it in there. All those other people may be out of compliance or not, but that's a question I like to always have answered. Like, legally, do we have to have it in our policy? Because we and many other well-respected districts don't have it in their policy.
But I feel like it should be in our policy. Only because if we're talking transparency and making sure that everyone understands it, and not to say that, I mean, if this isn't going to actually do anything more than just add it to it, I would rather have it be part of the policy so that it's well-known, as opposed to, making sure people understand what it is, if it is in fact law.
Yeah, and I'd want to check with other districts that really are putting a lot of time into this and have a lot more resources than ours, aren't putting it in their policy. So why? What is the catch? What is the why? Are we shooting ourselves in the foot somehow by adopting it in the policy? It's just, I don't think we're not gonna answer that question tonight, but I thought it was very curious that all these other bigger districts have the same policy that our current policy is, and they don't have any of the exceptions in here. On my reading of the Ed Code, most of these exceptions went into effect in 1976. It was updated in 2024, but most of these have been there for decades. Why aren't boards putting it in? And there's people that have been doing this a lot longer than I and are wiser than I who aren't putting it in their board policies. So before we just jump and add it in there, let's make sure there's not some caveat that we missed.
I feel like maybe those districts have had bigger fish to fry. I mean, seriously, I hate to say it that way, but it's just what our district faces versus, let's say, somewhere like Santa Rosa, it pales in comparison. So, I mean, I feel like there's no harm in putting it in here, but I do understand, Preston, your point, in the sense of, I get the question of why don't others, but I don't know, I guess I just don't see the potential caveat
I
for.
don't think it's the end of the world if we don't adopt it today. We can do we can answer the questions and get back to the board if they have it. Because I don't know the answer if it has to be in there or not. Because there's a lot
Our
of things
legal
that aren't
team
our
did
board policies
recommend
that
it.
might be part of Ed Code that we can do. I'm sorry.
Yeah, our legal team did recommend it. I didn't ask them about why other districts don't have it.
And I didn't have that question to put forward to be asked to them until I started pulling those policies the last couple days. But I think that would be my follow-up question with legal is, why don't these other districts have it? If it's being recommended legally, is their legal saying something different?
Maybe their legal teams are recommending them too, and they just haven't got around
Yeah,
Maybe.
to it, but.
Maybe,
because I feel like
but
not having it in our policy.
Usually we're not
creates
ahead.
liability.
It's always. We were ahead on a lot of things.
Except in technology.
I know.
Except in technology. My other concern with this is, as I'm going through this and I'm reflecting on how many cuts y'all are going to be making starting next month, the block schedule is really expensive. Are our students going to be able to complete these 30 extra credits if we can't afford an 8-period block schedule anymore? Because we've done this before. We've boosted up, we've increased our requirements for graduation, and then kids weren't able to make it, so we lowered it back down, and now we're boosting it up. And part of what I thought I heard the rationale was because we have an 8-period schedule, and kids have more options to take. But we can't afford that.
But this is something that the state's gonna require us to do no matter what.
No,
so we have to
we're way
figure-
beyond the state requirements.
No, for the,
Well, now you're talking,
The
you're
ethnic
going back to
studies, for
this, you're not
sure, but-
talking about the exceptions.
I'm talking about number of credits.
Okay, so you're not talking about the exemptions.
No, I'm talking
Okay,
about number
so-
of credits. So when we're looking at adding 10 credits for ethnic studies, we have to do that. That's a state requirement, right? But when we're adding 20 credits of CTE,
but we're not,
but I've been looking at the credits for this high school for 26 years, And it's always been hard whenever we have to make the budget crunch and cut electives for kids to get the elective credits because we don't have the funds to offer them. We're going to be cutting classes. So are we gonna boost this credit requirement? And then because we can't afford an 8-period day, our kids gonna have trouble meeting this yet again higher requirement for graduation?
And I see that, and I think one of the things is that some of our CTE classes were grant funded, right?
Yeah, we have
So-
sections funded.
So we have sections funded through grant funding, which I guess the question is for how long?
How long are the
long?
CTE classes covered under grant funding? Those that
I
are,
believe they're in 3-year cycles, is that right? In 3-year cycles? I'm trying to think.
Strasbourg course is, but the CTEIG is
Annual, yeah, but it's in the budget these days. so it's-
But let's just say a student, so right now a student has 8 periods for 4 years, every year for 4 years to earn their credits. And a class is basically 10 credits?
10 credits for a year.
10 credits for a year of a class, right? So now, when y'all make cuts, we can't afford an 8-period day. So what if we have to go to a 6-period day? Now they only have 60 credits possible to earn in 4 years, right? So what's 60 times 4? That's 240. They can't hit 248. It's mathematically impossible with the cuts that have to be made. Or if you have a 7-period day,
Portfolio counts as 8 credits, so.
Okay.
They would be able to make it as 248. They wouldn't have any free periods.
they would have nothing free. They can't miss once. It's setting them up for failure in the current budget climate. Right? This is like, this meshes with where we've been the last 3 years. It doesn't mesh with where we're going to be next year. Say we're at a 7-period day, 70 credits a year, times 4. Again, they just don't have any buffer. And I've watched this cycle of adding the credits. We get a higher requirement than kids can make. So,
well, looking at this, the change from the 238 to the 248 is adding the 10 credits for ethnic studies.
we do have to add the 10.
We have to add those.
And that's the only thing
That's
changing.
the only thing adding
Which
to the
is a-
248, which is something we have to do regardless.
But if we're adding 10, maybe we got to take something else somewhere else because we're not giving these kids any wiggle room. If a kid fails a class a couple times on a 6 to 7 period school day,
I mean, I'll
they
talk
can't
about
make that credit total.
my history. I failed a class my freshman year, and I didn't retake the class. I had to make up the credits, which we have credit recovery opportunities. Acellus. I see what you're saying. We're not giving if we have to, it's all at this point hypothetical. If we go back to 6 period or whatever, but there is means to still make up those credits without having to take a class over again and putting yourself behind more.
But I think what might be a little bit easier to swallow for everybody is I think that what we should do potentially is instead of increasing it by 10 units with ethnic studies, we leave it at 3 years, but one of those years has to be ethnic studies.
And that would do exactly what I'm
Yeah.
saying, like replace something
Kind of like we're
with
doing
something.
with the CTE, right?
Yeah.
Where you're
Yeah, I think
basically, you're
that's
not
fine.
adding credits, but you're just saying out of those 8 classes, 2 of them need to be CTE, right? So what if you're saying instead of increasing to 4 years of
Well-
history, social science, you keep it at 3 years, but 10 of which,
Have to be.
But
Has
what
to be
are
at
the
these
3
steps.
years currently, and are those graduation requirements as well.
So right now, that's required for social studies is
Those-
world history, U.S. history, and government.
So we can't do that.
Unless you incorporated it into,
Can you incorporate it into a current required?
So with those classes required, ethnic studies requirement is only technically a semester, but we build the master schedule based off the year, so almost all schools are having ethnic studies be a year-long course. And that's kind of the problem with government being only a semester requirement. That's why almost all schools have economics. Economics is technically an elective, but if you have one semester, you got to have something second semester for the teacher to teach.
Right. Which is why we always had econ and government in the
Yeah.
same class.
So in theory, that could be ethnic studies instead
But that
of
would only be
econ.
one semester. So that would
If-
only be
Mixed
5
studies would be
credits.
one semester, and then government would be the other semester.
Yeah, so right now,
So that would
all
make it
seniors
easier.
take GovEcon their senior year. So if you're looking to only have 3 years of social studies while having ethnic studies, then they would have to take world history, U.S. history, and government one semester, ethnic studies the other semester, and then you wouldn't have any economics.
Could economics be an elective?
Who's
Sure,
going to sign up
could
for
be.
it, though?
But I mean, we have that's a larger conversation.
I was gonna say, we've talked about life skills, they need to.
I just want everybody, we see this pendulum swing back and forth about every decade, where we add the requirements, and then we realize the students have no wiggle room, and we have to back it off. And this, I was wholeheartedly behind this a year ago when we knew we were offering that block schedule, but I don't think we're going to be able to afford to continue to offer 8 periods a day at the high school.
See, for me, I mean, I 100%, I mean, if we have to, and I'm all for ethnic studies as well, but then it just means we have to get creative about schedule. I mean, and like, that's something obviously with budgeting and whatnot, that would have to happen. I see this as a must, and the creativity come in with how we schedule then.
I mean, if we pass it, it's going to be a challenge or a, something that the high school administration is going to have to really be on early. So like if a freshman fails a class, we're on it right away to set up some credit recovery for them. So it's not waiting till their senior year.
Right, which
to
we
where-
do.
which-
Sudden it'd be oopsie.
Right, so I think that's,
well,
Yeah.
but I don't necessarily agree. I don't think that not having, I've never been involved in a high school district that has the maximum amount to graduate. I've never seen that. Most I've ever seen is 230 out of 240. I've never seen 240 out of 240. And I get the 8 point, let's just kind of throw that out, I shouldn't, because that's going to come throughout what they're doing. So I think we need to look a little bit farther in this because of the conversations we are going to have. I think this works for what we're currently doing, but I think, so I agree. I think it has no issues if we continue this, but I think that we have, as we've been talking about all along, is we have to look at potentially doing things differently for our budget, right, if we can't afford to do that. So I would also hate to do something that fits currently what we're doing, and in a few months,
And
we're
then
not
changing
doing
it.
the same thing, then we have to come back and revisit it.
Yep.
So, and not to prolong it, but I do think that I don't want to have the discussion about it like we're almost, putting the cart before the horse, so to speak, right? So, I think that needs to all be involved in that, but I would caution to have 240 out of 240 for graduation. That's a tough road to hoe. That's just, I've never, like I said, I've never seen that for that. I think 230 is a good number, which would be 238 in this case. But just looking at what's required in the state of California for minimum graduation, it is 3 courses in social studies, and that does not include ethnic studies. So we got to figure out how that's going to work in there. Because it does talk about you got to have U.S. history, world history, 1 semester of American government, 1 semester of economics, and that gives you your 3 years. So you need to do the 4 years. So I
it's-
think we either need to do it with the extra 10, But then there's got to be 10 that comes off somewhere else, potentially.
So so the 80 credits for college prep electives right now that we have, where did the 80 credits, that total come from? Is that something that we can knock down to 60 and then still require 20 of those to be CTE?
So in terms of a
graduation
graduation requirement for the state of California, the California minimum is 130 credits. So every high school has 4 years of English, for example, but the California minimum 130, you actually only need 3 years of English. So if you would want to, for example, take off a year of English requirements, which nobody does, but you could do that, that still hits those requirements. Part of the California minimum is actually 0 credits in electives. So any number of elective credits that a school district chooses to have is that much more over the minimum. So when, for example, we have a student who is an incarcerated youth after their sophomore year, comes out of juvenile hall in their junior year, they are then eligible for the 130. And so then we look at moving them out of their elective classes, unless that's something that's good for their mental health or something like that, because they no longer need that for their 130 graduation requirement. So in terms of just a minimum what you need for a diploma, you could knock the 80 down to 0, and that would still earn all of our Cloverdale High School students with a diploma.
You turn it off. Turn it off, darn it. So my question is, do we have to make the decision now? And can we wait? Because, I mean, not that I don't love the discussion, but if ultimately we're all coming to the same conclusion, can we just kind of like nip it so that we can kind of?
Yeah, what's the timeline on
Yeah.
needing this revised now?
Probably.
Well, I mean, we currently already have what we have, right? And so it's not like we don't have anything. It's not like we're absent, right? So I don't think, this doesn't have to change. Obviously, we have to add ethnic studies for the graduating class of 2930, right? So we're going to have to make that decision. That's the biggest one. But I would, so we don't have to make it now. It's not like we don't have requirements for our kids to deal with, right? And I think that it naturally, like you said, I mean, if it changes the amount of offerings that we have in a day, for example, that's going to be change the number of that they can get to, right? And so they're kind of, they're not mutually exclusive. They have to happen together. So we are going to start, as was said, we are going to start diving into looking at our budget, and looking at what we can afford, and looking at things we need to change. And so I think we do need to wait on this too, for that part. And I do notice in here looking that we're going to have to also add a semester of personal finance for the next 12th full class.
So
So we're going to have to figure all that stuff out too. But what I would see, what we need to start looking at also is that Forrest is absolutely right that what we're offering is above the state minimums, right? Most high schools will, right? But it's going to depend on how many we can get to. We don't, as has been said, we don't want sets of people up to fail, right? So you're having to do that. Or they're not allowed to have an issue or something to come up. We shouldn't have to force them to do credit recovery just because they had a one oops, right? So I just don't, we got to figure that out. So I don't really have an answer for that yet. But I do like the direction because I do think that we bought into the CTE part. And I like having people take part of CTE for that. We've also looked at potentially moving some CTE down to the middle school too, that we can also give credit for also, right? So there are different ways that we can kind of add that. So I know we've been talking about this for a while, but I do think some of the points that were brought up tonight, I think are worthy of doing that. And part of that's on me too, that I should have recognized that before. But again, these discussions have been happening for a while, and I think it's good to have that. And now having those, I think I would try to recommend that we hold off for a little bit.
for the state mandated ethnic studies, that affects the the graduating class of 2030?
29, because right now this.
No, 2030.
No, I think it's 2030.
I thought it was this year
Yeah,
is
it's 2030.
25, 26, 27, 28.
Graduating in 2930, so the class of
2930.
30.
2030.
Okay.
I just want to put that out there. So the class of 2030 will be freshmen, not next year, the year after.
Year and a half.
Yep.
So, well, yeah, not,
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's right.
I just,
We have time.
Yep.
I just want to put it out there that we should have that should be our end goal on having it done before then, so that
Well, then
freshman
the
class going
The following
in
year, class
has
of
it.
31 has to have the personal finance.
So then we get a year ahead on the personal finance and wrap it all into one, so we do it once.
Who can be with economics?
Yeah, I think this, in light of our budget situation, my thinking changed a lot from your first presentation. During the first presentation, this makes a ton of sense with the 8-period schedule
Yeah.
and getting kids access to as much as possible. But, like I said, I've seen the pendulum swing again and again, and superintendent answered the exact questions which I was going to ask, which were, how do you guys feel about if you have a 6 or 7 period schedule, students being able to be successful with the proposed amount? And the superintendent was saying, no, it seems to be too tight.
Yeah, in my first presentation, when I talked about the 6-period day, we were very tight. And then when we moved to an 8-period day, we went from students can only fail maybe 2 classes and still graduate by taking all their classes. And then you go to an 8-period day where you were earning 30 credits a semester and now earning 40 credits a semester, where you have almost too much room. Yeah.
No, I think that you're to be applauded for doing it. I agree. I just think that there's some things that are out of our control that might change the landscape a little bit. So I think that that's, because I'm, like I said, we're all for adding the stuff. It's just that we don't want to add
The
something
budgetary reason.
that's not possible.
Yeah, and I want, like, when you first presented this, other than my questions about the math one, it made total sense. But I think we're entering a different time.
So are we tabling
It
this?
sounds like we're gonna table S3. S4, consideration and possible approval of the revised board policy and new administrative regulation 6146.4, differential graduation and competency standards for students with disabilities.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion by trustee Addison and a second by trustee Garrison. Did you want to add something?
I mean, I have a whole PowerPoint, but it's just what's in your packet, so.
I think we're good? Okay. Motion by trustee Addison and second by trustee Garrison. Preferential?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And no one is absent. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next time I'm asking for something, I'm having Nicole come up with me, just so we're clear.
All right, future agenda items, cell phone policy. And then do we need to put on the future agenda items that we would like to get an update on this within the South property, the tribe?
Guy wire,
the
Do we
guy
have-
wire.
Well, I think that there's
Easement.
the 1 or 2 trustees are meeting with the superintendent, so
Yes, well, that's for the easement.
well, it's
yes.
gonna come back at the next meeting anyways.
But then I had also heard that y'all wanted information as to how have the two parallel, or how have the two developments in between the
history.
South property,
Of what's.
how have that added value to
That
the
could
South
just,
property?
couldn't that just fall under South property?
Well, I'm trying to give him
You're
direction.
giving him direction.
So, do we want to add it as the future agenda item to specifically state that, or
Just
South
give him
property,
direction
can you
under
please
South
put it under
property?
South property, that we would like to get an update on?
History of the South.
There.
Of Cloverdale.
Did you get that, Secretary?
Bunting says we got it.
All right. So, any other future agenda items?
I have a
Right now.
technical question.
Oh, you're.
Yes, trustee Addison.
Can I second my previous motion to adjourn from
No.
a prior meeting? No, okay. Well, my prior motion stands.
Okay. Future board meeting dates, December 18th, 2024, regular board meeting at 6 p.m. I have a Motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
I already moved.
He had
I'll
already
second
moved.
it.
Remember, it's like a standing motion for
At
like the last year, I
7:59
swear.
PM by trustee Addison, a second by trustee Garrison. Preferential?
Aye.
All in favor?